Hi, I'm Shelby and I love Shakespeare, and today I'm going to be reviewing a Shakespeare-ish film called Rosaline, streaming on Hulu, directed by Karen Maine. I was so excited about this movie because I love Shakespeare adaptations that take smaller characters and really kind of flesh out their story, even though William Shakespeare's plays didn't have the camera on them that much. So things like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which are two tiny characters from Hamlet. They got their own play and movie, and a recent adaptation on Netflix of Hamlet called Ophelia, starring Daisy Ridley, who plays Rey in Star Wars, all about what happens in between the times that we see Ophelia in Hamlet, because it's huge leaps in some ways. Or they talk about something that's happened off stage, and this film really fills in those gaps in imaginative ways that still honor the Shakespeare text. So I was really excited for this adaptation to do that for Rosaline in Romeo and Juliet, because the premise of the film is that Rosaline is the girl who Romeo was lovesick about, but then his buddies were like, dude, forget this girl, come to this party, and she might even be there, so you might be able to say hi, but let's get you a new person. He reluctantly goes until he hears that Rosaline might be there, then goes to the masked party and meets Juliet, and then love and death ensues. So Rosaline, the character, is in Romeo and Juliet, but she's just mentioned, and then some productions have her at the masked ball, but she doesn't have any lines. So how cool to hear from her and see what someone would come up with by thinking about that. And then also the trailer boasts this like really cool, almost Bridgerton-esque way into a period piece, almost like Marie Antoinette with Kirsten Dunst, that kind of vibe of like, we are targeting young humans and we want you to come in. So I love anything that's trying to get young Shakespeare nerds ignited, but after watching it, I gotta be honest with you, I'm upset. I am upset. I would say this is like the best and worst of what No Fear Shakespeare does, right? Like Shakespeare for Dummies, No Sweat Shakespeare, all of that, like the Spark Notes version, which I do think is a solid tool to use, but I tell my students all the time, do not stop there because you really don't get the rest of the story. So I had some things I really liked about this, and I have an extensive list of things I did not love, which I will go through in this review. But if you're watching this to see whether you even want to watch it before the spoilers doth ensue, I would say it's a fun, light kind of dive into the world of Verona in the time of Romeo and Juliet. The production value is gorgeous. It's beautiful to watch, again, in the Bridgerton kind of Downton Abbey way, where you get completely immersed in something so beautiful and very period accurate, which is fun for that time in Italy. But if you're looking at this as an introduction to Romeo and Juliet, it changes too many things that don't innovate it or fill in the gaps. It just cheapens it. Not only William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, the epic, beautiful play, but also this film. It like mocks the original play and then eventually kind of ends up mocking itself. I love things that are self-referential, but this was just, it got more teenage as it went on. I loved it at the beginning, fun energy, and then it just grated. It was 90 minutes long, and it seemed longer than that. So, before we dive into the review, please subscribe if you haven't already to join this amazing group on this channel of schnerds, Shakespeare nerds, and we can dive in. So things I liked. I loved the production value of this. Sweeping shots, beautifully, I mean, it was a visual feast. Very clean version of Italy in that time period. Just kind of like Bridgerton, where you get that grandeur and that elegance, not only the art direction, but the costumes, everything was so period correct, like very specific, very well done. Really a treat to watch. Like a part of me wants to watch it again on mute. That's so rude. But because visually, it really was beautiful. I loved how they had little bits of Italy. At one time when they were escaping, they went through Italian vineyards, right? Really nice touch. And then when they had Juliet's balcony, I have stood on Juliet's balcony in Verona and it looked exactly like it. Like so much attention to detail, and even the rooms in which everyone lives and exists. And it was just the torches, the random umbrellas while girls were playing croquet. Like very well done. Really a nice representation of a well-researched Verona in that time period of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Except the quill. At one point when Rosaline is writing with the quill, you'll see that all of the bit of the feathers is down to her hand. And this is actually what a quill looks like. You have to take away this part of the quill so that it doesn't like brush up against your hand, right? It's so weird because I'm left-handed, so this feels more accurate. So when you see this ever in a period film, if people have not kind of shaved off that part of it, then that is not period accurate. I learned it at a Renaissance fair, so it must be true. But that was the only thing I could find inaccurate about the location. Inaccuracies about the text, oh buddy. But I'm still on things that I liked. The music was really fun. Again, like Bridgerton, it brought in some contemporary aspects, but then also not necessarily top 40 kind of sounds. They had one song after Rosaline is jilted and her heart is broken. She's laying on the bed and the song is All By Myself, like all by myself. And then the curtain gets drawn and you realize that it's actually just a young like servant who's playing the violin of All By Myself and gets shooed away. And Rosaline's like, I was listening to that, very contemporary teenage, so funny. And also gives you, or any like a teenager watching this maybe as a first dive into what that time period would be, it shows that they didn't have music on demand. They would have had to have either play it themselves or hum it themselves or bring someone in. So that was really cute. And the other nod to the period that I loved was when Rosaline takes her cousin Juliet to the tavern to kind of like show you what the world is and learn to flirt a little bit. And they're sitting and talking to a guy and Rosaline's like, oh yeah, I love sports. It was so cute. Because of course we've either said that or we've heard people say that. And then she says, yeah, I love jousting, fencing, grappling, which is what the sports were of the time. So all those little nods to the period are so clever, so intelligently done, and would really enhance someone's view of this kind of classic teenage story. But there were not enough of those, but those are really fun. And then there were a couple like nods of fan service to Shakespeare devotees like me, but only a few. But my favorite one was when Romeo was leaving Rosaline's balcony, because it does start with them at first doing the balcony scene, and then later he does it with Juliet, the betrayal. Where at the end of Romeo and Juliet's famous Act 2, Scene 2 balcony scene, she says 1,000 times good night. And as Romeo is leaving Rosaline's, they're talking about seeing each other at the masked party the next day, and she says 1,000 times can't wait. That was so cute. Yes, that is a way to honor the text, but then innovate it slightly in a very clever way. Last little bits of things I loved are some of the characters. Rosaline is lovely. The actress playing it is excellent of what she's given to do. Very Anna Kendrick vibes, lands the joke, has the eye rolls. The sarcasm is so well done and not overdone, except in the writing of her character, because the journey doesn't really happen. She's still rolling her eyes and saying whatever by the end of the show. She has like a new love interest now, but that's about it. And that's my main issue with this character, is that we never really see what she's passionate about. She talks about wanting to be a cartographer, someone who does maps. And we see a glimpse of her passion of when the nurse sneaks in. It's a book, but I assume it's of maps. And she gets stoked. She's like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you so much. And then it fades after 2.5 seconds on screen. So that by the time she does have her love interest kind of bubbling, you almost don't believe that she can be passionate about anything, because we haven't really seen it elsewhere. She's just kind of a teenager. But what was written and on the page, she did really well with, and you liked watching her. And then her cousin Juliet, oh, this actress was so beautiful and reminded me of the younger sister in Bridgerton season 2. Like so intelligent, so graceful, young, but has a command of herself. She's a magnetism, an effervescence, which Juliet does have. You understand why someone would fall for her right away and why someone like the nurse would care for her. And I love that they gave her little moments where she was very intelligent, because Romeo and Juliet get undermined a lot by like, oh, they're just two silly teenagers. But the love with which they're gripped, right, has happened to all of us at one point. It's not rational, but it is there. And a lot of people say then that they're just like two dumb kids, but Juliet is so intelligent, and so is Romeo. He has this beautiful lines of poetry that come out of him and that he takes time to craft in order to really articulate his feelings. He is a poet at heart. And same with Juliet. She has this intelligence about her that really gives her a groundedness. And in this adaptation, it's shown a few different ways, but one of my favorites was when she's playing chess with her cousin Rosaline, and she does a checkmate. And then later is showing Rosaline an opening gambit of chess. That's really nice. And then we also see her kind of calming an upset horse, and it reveals that genuine kindness that only an animal like that would respond to, right? There's nothing superfluous about her. It's an internal magnetism that would calm that horse and would attract someone with that love at first sight feeling. Then we have the nurse, not Juliet's nurse, but Rosaline's nurse, played by Minnie Driver. So funny. Again, though, slightly underwritten because she says a line of, "I am a nurse," meaning a registered nurse. Like, she is totally qualified and certified, and is a little bit annoyed that people just perceive her as a maid. But the underwritten part is that anytime she opens her mouth, it's then about that. All she has is that she's a nurse. And so that's a little bit of a letdown to not let Minnie Driver have more colors. But like the Rosaline actress, she lands every line exactly as she's supposed to within this story. And then the other side character is Paris, who in Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare is the suitor of Juliet's that can kind of come between she and Romeo, because Papa Capulet, Lord Capulet, Juliet's dad, who Shakespeare actors call Papa Capulet. Papa Capulet basically arranges their marriage because he's decided that he doesn't want Juliet to have a choice. She's going to get married to this guy. And so most productions insinuate or flat out just show that Paris is gay. And in this movie, they go for it, and Paris is gay. In the establishing shot, he is just fabulous and has a slightly higher tenor of a voice, is jabbing his BFF Rosaline about her mystery lover. Later, we see him trying on hats and being like, "Oh my God, I look so cute." Like, totally going for it, unabashed, I am who I am. But just like the nurse, then everything that comes out of his mouth is, "I am the gay best friend" stereotype. And it felt like a few steps back in Hollywood. I get it if you have maybe 3 lines, but he had quite a big part. And I wish it was just a little bit more nuanced. But the best part is when he's talking to Papa Capulet, Juliet's dad is like, "Are you gonna be good to her?" And he's like, "Yes! Yes, I will." So, yes, happens quite a bit. But then the standout character is Steve the Courier. Totally made up character. He's this like stoned hippie surfer messenger who takes, the handwritten quill letters to other people. And Rosaline keeps being like, "Dude, did you deliver my message?" And he was like, "I think so." It was great. So thank goodness he was there, because when he and Minnie Driver popped in, it was like, oh, thank God. I feel like I can smile again. Another character of note, though, before we move on to what I really didn't like, was Dario, who is, after Rosaline and Romeo are having their issues, Dario is the hot, sexy, new, tall, dark, handsome alternate love interest, who they end up being together at the end. I just laugh at Dario because I'm like, where'd that name come from? Certainly not in the canon. Not that it has to be, but I was like, there's a lot of cool names in the canon. I wonder why they didn't kind of pull that. Like Shakespeare in Love, right? Makes so many different references and pulls from all the other plays. So there's so much of that, those juicy Easter eggs for people like me who love these plays. But his name's Dario, and he's a lot like the Duke in Bridgerton season 1. Very dashing. At one point he has his shirt off. It's like, honestly, reminds me the most of Kristoff in Frozen, and that's kind of their relationship. It's very like Kate and Petruchio, but diet, like super light version. And even at one point he says love is an open door. So he's not given much either, but he does a lovely job. But I think that's what's bringing me to what I didn't like, is I didn't care about anybody, and the main thing is there was no urgency. None of it. Romeo and Juliet has a prologue that says, here's what's going to happen, 2 hours traffic of our stage, and then it zooms. All of these kind of things that get misconstrued, or people that don't meet each other in time. One wakes up just as the other's dying. Like, it's all about time. And this was 90 minutes long, and it seemed so slow. And it's because the internal given circumstances were just not there. At one point, Rosaline hears about Romeo and Juliet going to elope and is going to interrupt the wedding. And the whole scene of them going to interrupt the wedding, because she's with her new love interest, they're just strolling. I'm like, are you gonna do this wedding or not? Are you gonna stop it? It's just, there was no tug, no importance, nothing was important. And as the film went on, like I understand establishing at the beginning, this is funny, you can laugh, but then to have nothing deepen, if anything, it went like even broader. It like went Three Stooges, but without that level of intelligence or polish. It just got campy and stupid and rude. And the ending, when there's these two kids dead, Rosaline and the nurse kind of add to the fake that they're dead, but it's also in broad daylight, which is weird. So they convince the parents that their children are dead, and then the parents just leave. There's no grief. There's no anything. It's almost like the dads are talking to each other like, yeah, we should maybe stop fighting, and ooh, that kind of a monument sounds great. There's nothing, which if that was the joke, go for it. But there was literally a shot of everyone just like waiting by the dead bodies to have the parents leave. And the way she even tells them to go is she goes, Capulets, anon, which anon means soon, like I'll see you soon. It's how I end all of my videos. And she uses it like it means go. Like, no, absolutely not. So there were a few flashes of, I know this text, I revere this text, but let's fuck with it in a fun way. And then it just fizzled into dumb. So the main rant I have is with Romeo. The actor was totally fine. He was very like a young Heath Ledger, Chris Hemsworth kind of version. But the way that Romeo was written was embarrassing. So Romeo is one of the richest characters. Poetry floods out of him like a Harry Styles or something like that. Like someone who is captivating in an emo artistic way. He is lovesick, but he's not a doofus. Romeo definitely, especially in the balcony scene, has moments of being a nervous, clumsy teenager, but his poetry is what kind of saves him and grounds him and what eventually finalizes that he and Juliet are in love and want to be together. But this Romeo, first we see, and he like gets hit by plants and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. They're pushing that in. But then he climbs up to Rosaline's balcony because it starts with her, and then he spouts poetry to her. And it is horrible. They were trying to have him spout a little bit of Romeo's actual poetry, and then Rosaline say, why are you talking like that? To then give permission of like, we don't have to actually use any of the verse throughout the whole story. Shakespeare in Love does that, but very intelligently. This one, he does the poetry, but misquotes it. I was like, how can you not say Romeo's lines correctly before she then stops you? So not only does he botch the verse that all of this is based on, but he is bad at poetry. They're saying Romeo is not a poetic soul, is not someone who would be good at that. I would have loved the storyline to have been, he was trying to woo her and poetry just wasn't her thing. Then he's dejected, then he finds Juliet who loves poetry, right? That is a great arc. But this guy was just bad at poetry, obviously using it as a line, probably got it off of like a meme from Instagram the day before, and he didn't even believe in the poetry. So like, it wouldn't have wooed me either, Rosaline. So this adaptation completely changes the plot in that Rosaline and Romeo are in a relationship. He ascends the balcony, they're making out. Also, the kisses are not steamy. If you're looking for Bridgerton, it is not that. So they're in a relationship. And then right before the masked ball, he says to Rosaline, I love you. And you don't even believe that he really knows what that means or believes that. But she does not say it back. He's jilted. As he's going away, she says, go to the ball tomorrow night. I'll see you then. Sorry, I just was surprised, so I couldn't say it back. So he's like, okay. So he goes to the masked party to see Rosaline. Again, that urgency is gone because it's not this anticipation of, oh, I don't really want to think about other women, but she also might be there. Maybe I'll have one last chance to really get her to fall in love with me. It's just they've planned the meeting and he doesn't really even want to see her because she kind of rejected him, but not fully. She just didn't say I love you. And then they make another date. So that means that when he meets Juliet, which is also by bumping into her, rather than I see her across the room, I make the effort to get her alone and then spout a sonnet with her. Like, that's the love story. No, in this they run into each other and of course have that, oh my gosh, it's you moment. And then they say each other's names, which tell anyone that they're part of the feuding families. In the real play, they don't do that till the end where they ask each other, who is that? Who is that? And then they both have the moment of, oh no, they're from feuding families. But this way it was like so chill. They had a couple lines in this movie about, oh, if they find us, they're gonna kill us, but then Rosaline's like, whatever. Like, it kept undercutting any danger that there really could be. So, Romeo and Juliet meet, they say each other's names, and now that he's into her, that means he's cheating on Rosaline. It's not that he has never been in a relationship with her and it has this void of love that he can't wait to thrust upon someone, and then meets someone who is just exactly his soul match, and that's why everything ensues. He's with someone else. He's butthurt about the last time they were together, and then he starts seeing someone else. He's cheating on her. Totally cheapens his character. And then Juliet is at the fight where Mercutio dies and Tybalt dies, and they're barely in it anyway. Mercutio is in like 2 scenes, and then he doesn't even get to say his beautiful, famous line, "A plague on both your houses." Rosaline says that at the end over the 2 dead bodies and says, "Shame on your houses." Like, why not just say the real line? Ugh. But the end, Rosaline and Dorian, what's his name? Domino. Rosaline and her love interest character help convince the parents, who apparently don't care about their kids, that these 2 are dead in broad daylight, even though there's no blood or anything. And once they leave, Rosaline helps them escape by boat. So Romeo and Juliet get away, and they get to have their whole life together. And the first thing that happens is that Romeo's steering the boat and Juliet's sitting there, and they don't say anything. They were trying to have it be comedic, but it wasn't funny. Again, because it was a little drawn out, and it implies that they have nothing in common. And there's been a lot of fun adaptations about what happened if Romeo and Juliet really did survive. You know, that level of love. What if that had been allowed to continue? Would it have fizzled out or whatever? But to have it like immediately fizzle out, and then they have an 8-hour boat ride to Cyprus, which I'm sure was a lot longer than 8 hours on this tiny sailboat, that they were annoyed by each other already, not just bored or like, what do you want to talk about? Truly resenting each other. What a horrible way to end a film about one of the greatest love stories. And it was also like, wait, can there really only be one love story in like a teenage adaptation? Why can't Romeo and Juliet have their own beautiful love story? And then Rosaline and, I gotta find his name, Dario, have their own love story, a different version. Why is it only one? And why would you undercut the story on which you've based this so heartily? Because I know they were trying to be innovative, but it ended up just cheapening not only the original text, but the entire film as well. So those are my thoughts. What did you think of it? Or if you haven't seen it yet, are you interested in seeing it after hearing this review? I know it was a really harsh review, but please believe me when I want to love every single film, new take, adaptation of anything Shakespeare. I love that people are reimagining it in different ways. I just want it to be done, I don't even know if reverently is the word. I just want to be done with some respect and some sense of passion for whatever take you're going for. So if you also feel like blue-balled by this version, definitely watch Ophelia on Netflix. Or if it's not there anymore, then find it, because it is stunning and it will completely revive your hope in contemporary, thrilling Shakespeare adaptations about lesser-known characters. Thank you so much for being here. Remember to subscribe and comment below about what your thoughts are after hearing my thoughts. And I'll see you very soon, and use this term correctly. Anon.